Hi, my name is Joe Major. I'm the pastor of Faith Baptist Church in Violet, Louisiana. And one thing that was always in my home, as well as in the churches that I grew up in, was the Scofield Reference Bible. And this Bible, more than any other book, was influential in the lives of Christians throughout my lifetime. And this book here, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever read what is in this book? Have you seen the notes that are in it? Was this man a good man, a godly man, a man that could be looked up to? And if so, why was it that he left his wife and daughters here in Kansas and completely abandoned them, never gave them a dime in support? The Bible tells us that if a man provide not for his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. So this man, again, was he a great man that was used by God? Or was this man an agent of the devil?
Before we get into the doctrine, I want to talk about who Cyrus Scofield was, because this is going to blow away people. If you have a Scofield Reference Bible, you need to know the author of that reference Bible, because he's not the person you think he is. He's not Dr. Scofield.
Never was a doctor.
He never was a doctor, all right? Never, ever.
You know, Scofield survived 18 major Civil War battles. God brought him through to give you a book that was that helpful all through those many, many decades. He was even at the Battle of Antietam, and God pulled him through that, the bloodiest battle and one-day casualty count in the history of the American military. 20-something thousand casualties in one day. The man that put that book together for you at that battlefield.
Embellished his Civil War record. He was in the Confederate Army, the 7th Tennessee Infantry. He totally embellished his record, and if you just go on the internet, you can find a very detailed investigation by a Tennessee professor who did a lot of research into Scofield's true military record.
And that was a contemporary of his age, too,
Yes.
that wrote
Yes.
that up. So,
who wrote exactly what Scofield did, but then compared it to what he said about his record. He embellished it. He made up stuff. He made people believe he was a hero. He was a hero at Antietam. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And Scofield just made things up. But this was typical of his life.
Using the alias of Charles Ingersoll, he had, on more than one occasion, spent some time in jail. David Lutzweiler documents a few of these in his Dishonest Life. In November 29, 1877, edition of the Milwaukee Daily Sentinel reported, this was in the newspaper, a fellow named Charles Ingersoll, who for 2 weeks past boarded at the Metropolitan Hotel, is under arrest for vagrancy. The fellow pretended to be the owner of a 1,300-acre plantation near Mobile and was paving the way to a union with a fair daughter of the South Side. When his career here was suddenly brought to a close by the landlord of the hotel, Mr. Sam Maynard, who cared more to save the lady than to call him to account for the amount of the board bill.
Well, I should say Senator Ingalls appointed Scofield as the U.S. District Attorney for Kansas.
right.
Okay, Scofield was 29 years old.
Nice position for 29.
He never went to law school.
Right.
Okay, became U.S. District Attorney for the state of, for Kansas at age 29. He didn't last 1 year in that office. He was forced to resign. Listen to me, folks. Cyrus Scofield was forced to resign as U.S. District Attorney of Kansas under a cloud of scandal, including bribery.
Yes, and land transfers and
Yes.
some very questionable
He
practices.
embezzled money out of people. There were warrants for his arrest. Some people believe he served some time in jail for forgery. He was forging names to banknotes to get loans. The guy was involved in all kinds of shady deals, okay? This is Cyrus Scofield.
Now, in 1882, after his alleged conversion, listen carefully, after his conversion in jail, he continued to neglect his own wife and children back in Kansas, while at the same time serving as the fill-in pastor of the First Congregational Church of Dallas, Texas.
And he ends up in Dallas, Texas, and becomes the pastor of the First Congregational Church of Dallas. Now, he marries a woman from the church, but he doesn't tell the church that he abandoned his wife and children back in Kansas. Now, he never gave them a dime in support, totally abandoned them. And yet he's a pastor of a church in Dallas, okay? And he doesn't tell the congregation. You know, he didn't put that on his resume. He didn't tell the, the pastoral selection committee, oh, by the way, I've got another wife and kids back there in Kansas, and I got this new wife here, and he just kept it quiet, okay?
Scofield was not qualified to pastor a church of any kind. For one, he was known as being a crooked lawyer. That was his reputation. You know, he was considered a very successful U.S. district attorney, but he was forced to resign because of scandal. He was accused of taking bribes from the railroad and political contributions and things like that. And you know, the records don't make it clear, but some people believe too he even did some jail time. So we see also that Scofield, he abandoned his first wife and his 2 daughters.
He gets invited to become a member of the Lotus Club of New York City.
Now, what's the Lotus Club?
Well, the Lotus Club is one of the most prestigious gentlemen's club of New York City. We're talking about people, sponsors like Andrew Carnegie, okay?
Right.
The elite of the elite were members of the Lotus Club, and it's still around today. Where did he get the money? Where did he get the money to pay the membership dues? The membership dues were more than his salary.
Right.
All right. Why would he be invited? This nobody pastor. Why would he be invited to come to New York City and join the Lotus Club? Well, who sponsored him? The man who sponsored Cyrus Scofield was a Jewish lawyer named Samuel Untermeyer. Now, Samuel Untermeyer was an agent for the Rothschild banking dynasty.
All right, so he's the one that's financing this up to this point.
Well, he's inviting Cyrus Scofield to join the Lotus Club. Why?
Okay.
Why would a lawyer, Samuel Untermeyer, an agent for the Rothschilds, what interest would he have in Cyrus Scofield, an unknown, undistinguished pastor of a small church in Massachusetts who's got a police record and a shady past for being a swindler? Why would this Jewish lawyer want anything to do with Cyrus Scofield?
Why is a Zionist Jewish lawyer interested in some small town preacher in Boston?
Well, isn't that the $1 million question here? And there's one other piece of information you need to know about Mr. Untermeyer. He is, remember I told you, he was an agent for the Rothschilds. He wrote the Senate law. He wrote the Senate bill that became law, that established the U.S. Federal Reserve banking systems.
So this is the guy that we have to blame for the Federal Reserve today?
He also became the first lawyer for the IRS. Well, Cyrus Scofield suddenly gets sponsored to go to London, and he has a meeting with the head people, the top executives of Oxford Publishing.
All right, and that was the premier publishing company in the world at that time,
You
right?
better believe it. And you just couldn't get a meeting in London with Oxford Publishing.
But he could.
Yeah, he got him there, and he got him over to London to meet with the Oxford Publishing executives. And so Scofield comes back with a publishing contract, to publish John Nelson Darby's Zionist Notes in a Christian Bible.
This book was so important that Oxford University Press opened its first branch in the United States to publish it. They had never published an American book before. They had not published Whittier's books, his poetry. They had not published Longfellow. They had not published any of our great American authors, but they published this.
The Scofield Reference Bible was copyrighted in 1909. It is an Old and New Testament with most of the notes in the original text added in the Old Testament. Later, many notes were added to the New Testament as the Scofield Reference Bible was re-edited several times, with the most radical change being made in 1967.
The book has been updated over and over again, each time by Oxford University Press, always having Mr. Scofield's name on the front of it. In fact, he's listed as the editor in the most recent edition, even though he's been dead for about 40 years.